Greetings. Hey, Jamie or Charlene, can I? At what point are last year's senators not part of Faculty Senate and next year's senators become part of, in other words, at what point am I not on Faculty Senate anymore? Is it August 1st or July 1st?
It was July 1st, so we are officially changed to the new Senate. But former senators are welcome to stay, you just can't vote.
Okay, so perfect. I don't have to be here. Sorry, I've got the baby upstairs.
No worries.
I'm about to wake up from her nap. So I came just in case. I was like, am I supposed to?
We don't blame you, Stephanie.
Okay, I am going to leave it on and try to listen, but I might stop my video and mute myself if I don't have to vote or anything. I'll just kind of have it on in the background.
Where's your sense of commitment?
Yeah.
Engagement.
Well, I do have my mother-in-law here. Thankfully, she's helping out a little. I'm trying to get syllabus done and a couple of other things, but
He can sit in for you.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Really, it's called priority, Stephanie. So
Right. She's still napping, but if she wakes up, I might have to scoot.
thanks for all you do.
Oh, thank you.
All right, so it's 3:11, so I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. I've been trying to keep up with attendance, but I know people are coming in quickly and we wanna make sure we get the attendance right. So I'm gonna do a roll call just to see who's here and make sure I didn't miss someone. So we can, when your name's said, you can just say here, and we'll just go through everyone's names quickly and then we'll get down to business. So, and I'll try to skip people I've already seen are here. So Donald Reesing. Okay. All right, David Gillis.
Giles, yes, here.
Giles, sorry. I'm really bad at pronunciation, so please do correct me. Jody Kasky. Natalie Osley.
Here, Owsley.
Owsley, okay. Irina Kamelko. I know I said that one wrong. Sarah Einstein. Ethan Mills.
Here.
Jacqueline Michael.
Here.
Joshua Hamblin.
Here.
Hill Craddock. Eleni Pantangauto.
Here.
Oh, there you go. Mingjun Zi.
Yes, here.
Okay. Priscilla Sims Robertson.
Here.
I think that's everybody, because again, I caught a lot of you as you entered. So if I didn't say your name, oh, maybe I might have skipped over Allison Allerton. Did I skip over Allison Allerton? Okay, is there a senator that I skipped over that's here? All right, I think I got everybody.
You didn't call my name, Charlene, but
Oh yeah, no, I got you. Sorry, Julia. What I should say is let me go back through who's missing. Let's see if Donald Rising showed up yet. Donald, we're almost all here. Irina, Jody, Sarah, Hill. Okay, that's it. All right, so first business on our agenda is we do need to confirm a secretary so we can get down to business. I have nominated Nominata Barbosa. She's an instructor in the biology department. Do we have a second for her nomination?
I'll second Jamie Harvey.
Right. So we're going to try out our new voting system. So if you got your directions, we know that if you go to your participants panel, and I'm going to share the screen where I show how to do this. If you go to your participants panel, you'll see where you can click yes or no to the question. So this is for our senators to click yes or no, and then Nominata and I behind the scenes will be double checking that the votes are coming from senators. But if you could take a moment to click either yes, you approve of Nominata as our secretary, or no, you do not. If you do not click yes or no, you'll be recorded as an abstention. So if you take a moment or two to do that. Do we have any questions about how to vote? Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen so I can see everything better. Okay, so. She passes, and I'll get the exact count as I go down. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. All right, so the majority have approved Nominata Barbosa as our secretary, so I'd like to welcome her. Thank you for agreeing to be the Faculty Senate Secretary. Okay, now we'll get down to our business. We're going to start with administrative reports, and the Chancellor is up first.
Well, thank you, Charlene. I just want to thank all of you. It's very unusual to have a July meeting for the Senate. I appreciate each of you stepping in early, and so many of you who are a part of this meeting. So thank you. This is kind of an unprecedented time for all of us, but particularly for higher education. So I know the provost is going to make a few comments, and we could take questions or whatever. I know you've got a long agenda, so we're both here however this works. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor Engel. Up next is Provost Hale.
Thank you, President Simmons. I'll also try to be brief because I know you have a really full agenda. There are 3 items that I want to bring to your attention very briefly. The first is that the planning and implementation for the fall semester are continuing, and the good news, at least for now, is that when Banner was reopened and students could begin changing and adjusting their schedules, there's not been a decrease in enrollments. In fact, both headcount and seats occupied have increased slightly. Last time, I think information was passed along to me, there were a small number of face-to-face seats that were still available and a larger quantity of online seats. We are monitoring, as I'm sure deans, department heads, and program directors are, the wait lists for classes, and we hope that students will use the wait list function. In the past, it's been the wait list function that has given us a really good gauge about what classes needed to be added, and we hope that this fall it will serve that function for us, but also give us some idea about the modalities in which those courses should be added as well. The classrooms are coming together. For some of you, it will have been a while probably since you've been on campus. I'm very appreciative of the efforts of Tom Ellis and his team in facilities, and also Vice Chancellor Farnsworth and the IT group. The work that Donnie Benneman, Robbie Robinson, Matt Matthews, and others have done in planning the layout for our classes has been extraordinarily time consuming. It is essential to our efforts to keep you, our staff members, and our students safe. And so I just want to point out their efforts. The second thing that I wanted to bring to your attention is that the Chancellor, the Vice Chancellors, the Chief of Staff, the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Emergency Services, Robbie Robinson, Vice Provost Matt Matthews, and the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Human Resources, Lori Pugh, have been participating in some webinars for the last couple of nights, and we have a couple of additional ones that are coming up in the next 2 weeks. The webinars that we've been participating in, the first one was a webinar for graduate students. That was a pretty small group all in all. I think less than 40 by the time we got finished, logged into that webinar. Last night we had one for parents of incoming students, and there were over 600 people who registered for that webinar. I don't know if we had all 600 of them there. I know we topped 400 the last time that I glanced at the total last evening. The ones that are coming up are webinars, one planned for commuter students, and then another one planned for residential students to campus. The format that those took is very similar to the format that Chancellor Engel's campus forums have taken on Wednesday afternoons, where essentially there were a number of questions, many of which were submitted to us in advance. Others came to us in the chat function, but it was just an opportunity for us to address questions and concerns so far that graduate students and parents had that they wanted to pass along to us or wanted our comment or feedback on. The third thing that I was going to tell you is that while your faculty Senate president may have changed, your president's commitment to co-hosting forums with me has not. And President Simmons and I have hosted the first two of our forums together, one last Thursday afternoon and another one earlier this morning. And they will be ongoing for the foreseeable future. So we invite you to join us in those Thursday forums so that we can keep you up to date on things that are going on campus and or answer any questions that you might have about what's going on. Madam President, that's my report.
Thank you, Provost Hale. Are there any other administrators who want to give a report? Okay, up next, the order of business is dictated by our bylaws. So up next we go with committee reports, and the General Education Committee did want to come today and report on a statement that they have adopted. So Laura Ingram, I think, is going to do it.
I think Talia is also.
So I'm happy to speak, but Talia is the committee chair. Is she still on the call?
I thought she couldn't come to, oh, wait, there she is, but she's muted.
She was there a few minutes ago.
Yeah, she's here. But Talia? There we go.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. I'll bring it up, Talia, if you want to start explaining your statement. Oops.
She said she's here, her computer froze.
Oh. Okay, do you want to go ahead and explain, Laura?
I'm happy to talk about it. So over the summer, the committee got together and we considered ways that we could respond to this moment that we're in, this really important moment where we all want to try to really candidly and carefully look at our curriculum and the way that we address issues of race, issues of diversity and equity and inclusion. And so we considered a couple of what some people called quick fixes to try to do that very quickly over the summer, and realized after some conversation that that was just not the way the committee was interested in moving forward. They wanted a more thoughtful, although still quick, process. So we developed this statement of intent that you can see here on the screen to really hold the committee accountable for moving forward this year immediately, to really very carefully look at the general education program, the curriculum in it, and also take a look at other issues that the committee has really realized have been sort of problematic for the way our program is structured, as we go through this year. So I'll just, I know it's on your screen, but I'll just read it to you. We're in a historic moment that demands that we reckon with the serious injustice of systemic racism and the importance of understanding its history and effects. As a Faculty Senate committee charged with defining a central part of every UTC student's coursework, we aim to meet this moment. In the academic year 2020-2021, that's hard to say, the General Education Committee will coordinate a thorough review of our general education program to address diversity, inclusion, and equity. We will make sure that every student develops an understanding of why we are where we are now, what options we have in the future, how other societies, for better or worse, wrestle with their own issues of diversity and inclusion. In so doing, we will work to provide more content in general education to support UTC's strategic goal number 4, embrace diversity and inclusion as a path to excellence and societal change. In addition, our review will consider ways to revise our general education program to make it more meaningful to students and to provide them with the skills and knowledge to engage with the world in their work, home, and civic lives. So this is really just a statement of intent. It is not a specific proposal. So it is not an action item to vote on, but we did want to just let you all know sort of what's on our minds right now.
And
You're back.
now, so I'm here. If there's any questions, I can answer any, I hope.
Yeah, so does anyone have any questions or anything to say to the General Education Committee?
I have a question, if I may. This is Julia Kamiski. I can't tell if you can see me. Are there going to be, is there an opportunity to submit new applications for new gen ed certification, or is that process still closed?
We were just talking about that, and I think we've come to the conclusion, and Lauren can correct me if not, that we are going to go ahead and continue the work of the Gen Ed Committee and review applications this year. So this would be in addition to the normal work. We're not going to suspend the review of new applications.
I guess I have a question that is, so how did you guys go about writing the statement? Was there debate about this statement and conversation within the committee? Apparently it's not something we need to vote on, so there's no point in having a debate here. Some of the statements seem to me rather broad, such as that we will make sure that every student develops understanding of why we are where we are. I suspect that you could not get two historians to agree as to the answer to that question. And so I'm just wondering, some of it seems a little broad. Obviously I'm for the general impulse of it, and I'm not, but I'm just wondering if there was some conversation and how it came to be the statement that it is.
Yes, so the Gen Ed Committee, we met, and so we had sort of an initial draft that Lane Wilkinson, Lauren, and I came up with. We met with the Gen Ed Committee and had an hour-long meeting, mostly debating this statement, and made some revisions and then voted on it as a committee. I don't think we felt, I'm sympathetic to those concerns. I don't think we felt that since this was merely a statement of intent and wasn't sort of bylaws or something that was going to go down in some sort of official record, the vagueness of it, we thought it wasn't necessary. Largely, we thought it wasn't necessary to address. But I see what you're saying. So I think this is more just sort of making that commitment to working on this this semester. And the kinds of issues you raise, I think, would be ones we'd have to address. Like, what is it that, how do we determine what these courses are? How do we even provide this in an academically rigorous and serious way? So, so there was a discussion and a ultimate vote on it.
Okay, thank you.
Beth Crawford has her hand up. Beth?
Yeah, just one question. I know the last couple of years, one of the things the Gen Ed Committee's been doing is making sure that we're able to measure what we say Gen Ed is. And so I have a bit of a concern that the main statement is develop an understanding when that is an unmeasurable term. And I wonder if the committee could, as you look forward, maybe come up with something more measurable, be able to articulate, share an experience, something that is actually measurable as we move forward. Because I know that's something they've already been working on for the requirements for SAC-COC.
Yeah, Beth, absolutely. So this statement is not going to be formally assessed or measured. So I wasn't worried about that for the statement, but you're absolutely right. One of the things that we want to address overall, and we had already begun talking with the Senate about this past year, is that some of our outcomes are still a little too broad and messy and not very easily assessed and measured. And so that's part of what we want to look at as well. So that's very top of mind.
Any other questions for the committee?
Hi, this is Jacqueline. Excuse me. I put my question in the chat. My question was just to Talia and Lauren. Can you share maybe some of the next steps for your committee following on this letter of intent? What are some of the ideas that you have that you'll be working on next? Thanks.
I think I'm gonna have to say we're working on figuring out what the next steps are. So we're prior to even having steps. So, you know, one of the things that Lane researched, and that I'm new to being the chair of this committee just the last couple of weeks, so it's something I need to research more, and is exactly what would this look like? So would it be attributes? Would it be an actual course category? Would it be attributes? Would we want to reconceive entirely kind of how we think about Gen Ed? Maybe getting out of, as I think it was referred to in our meeting, the silo model of Gen Ed. So I'm sorry that I can't answer that question right now. I think we have to sort of figure out first how even to proceed with all of these sort of various kind of questions, and then also the questions of that Lauren's speaking about, the sort of assessment questions too, that are all sort of wrapped into this. So sorry I can't say that right now, but we are hoping to have a schedule and sort of breaking down these various points and how we'd sort of discuss that, and also make sure that all the different stakeholders at the university, all the different people who are involved with Gen Ed would be part of that conversation.
Yeah, one of the things that we had discussed was the fact that these Zoom meetings that we've all been having have been really, really well attended. If you think about our sort of in-person faculty meetings versus the weekly Q&A meetings with the chancellor and the provost, lots of people are showing up. And so definitely we wanted to take advantage of that and make sure that we have plenty of opportunities for people to comment, to ask questions, to give their ideas and opinions and weigh in on the process. But I imagine that we'll start out with sort of identifying a calendar and a set of perhaps design principles or process principles that we want to adopt, and sort of go from there.
I see Ethan had a question very related to the one just posed. Ethan, does that answer your question as well? They're still figuring it all out?
Yeah. Sorry if I was saying the same thing, but yeah, I think Talia and Lauren have already answered it. So thank you very much.
Okay, any last questions? Okay, then we're gonna move on to our main business item for the day, which is to look at a COVID absence statement. I'm gonna share a different screen, so just give me a second. So I did send around an update this morning. I'm sorry it was so last minute, but some concerns came up last night about the opening set paragraph of the statement, and so it had to be adjusted last night and sent around this morning, and we weren't able to get it up on the website because we haven't regained full access to our website since it moved to Drupal. But we will get whatever is the final version that is finished today or whenever the Senate adopts it. We will get that up on the as the actual item on the Faculty Senate website, so there will be no confusion. So this comes out of two sources. First, the fall task force, the task force for restarting this university in fall, has suggested that we adopt some kind of absence statement to create a culture where students will not be penalized for not being able to attend class because they are showing COVID symptoms. We really want students to stay home if they are potentially symptomatic. So it was suggested that that task force had a draft. It was brought to the committee, to the Senate last month, which was a partially different Senate. And that Senate weighed that option, which was an option where departments would really adopt their own individual policies, or whether we should create a university-wide policy. And the June Senate meeting voted for creating a university-wide policy. So an ad hoc committee was created. And this is the document that came out of that ad hoc committee. So it's 3 pages. The first page is a rationale. This is not what would end up in syllabi, but this is the rationale for why the statement was made. We want this documented so it's understood why we did this and what time period it's for. Right now, it is being imagined as a statement for the fall, which we can revisit. If we want to adopt it in the spring, we can make adjustments, etc. The key part of the statement is there's page 2 and there's page 3. They are the same statements. The difference is whether it's told in the second or third person, because we understand that some people write their syllabi using you and I, like you for the student and I as an instructor, and other people write in third person where they say student and instructor. So we wanted to give both formats because, you know, people have different languages in their syllabi. So this is what the committee came up with. And now we're going to open the floor for discussion, debate, etc. So questions, comments, etc.
I have one. Thanks to the committee for doing such a great job on this and taking the time to do this during your off time. What we might want to do is add a link to the COVID webpage, as CDC guidelines are always changing, and the COVID requirements and what people should do on campus are changing. So that's just my only suggestion.
I see that Beth has raised her hand. Beth?
One question, in the one that's third person, would it be possible or allowable, we have a lot of classes that are team taught, to change the faculty part of it to third person as well? So rather than say I or me, change it to the faculty will, the faculty should?
Yes, so I mean, one of them is written in, like instead of saying instructor, you say the faculty.
Well, it's, please notify me, you know, if you don't believe I've been clear, changing that to third person. I was just wondering if that would be allowable or not.
Yes, I mean, we have 2 different versions. One is in second and one is in third. So there is one where it just says contact faculty. Does that make sense?
All the faculty are always in first person in both statements. The faculty is, when that person talks, it's contact me, make sure I have given you the right information.
That would be my mistake. I will fix it so that it says faculty. Yes, thank you for catching that. I will make sure that the third person once never says me, it says faculty.
Thank you.
Charlene, would it be possible in that first opening paragraph of the actual attendance policy to either provide a website or link to where students would go for the university approved application?
At this time, that is still being developed, so we don't know what the link is. But yes, eventually that could be added. But at this time, the student app is still in development, so we don't have a link for it.
Charlene, I have 2 questions. One is related to that link. In the last, I don't even know which group Zoom call it was, there was a question of who is going to be reviewing the student, I guess, health surveys. Do we have an answer to that question?
I can answer that. So it's going to be Student Outreach Support and University Health Services reviews the student surveys. If there's a concern listed and the student's supposed to be filling out the illness notification form, faculty would then be notified if the student needs to miss class, as we do for any other academic notification. So rather than having to have a doctor's note, obviously with COVID, we'll have the illness notification form, and we'll specify to the faculty the length of time the student is intended to be out for, whether that's 10 days if the student is ill or 14 days if the student is in quarantine, as well as if there are any extensions needed if the student is ill. So faculty will receive that electronically separately from the student as well, with that confirmation.
Okay, thank you, Brett. That relieves some of my fears. The other question that I have is, well, one of the paragraphs is highlighted, like instructors should add a list here. But in that paragraph, in the paragraph below, it's if you are asymptomatic or if you become sick and miss coursework. So my question is, there are a lot of people who are becoming sick with COVID, but are still able to continue their coursework. The way it reads now is only if you are asymptomatic, then you continue. But if you have like a sore throat, that might be perceived as, well, sorry, I can push things off. So that was just my question of it. Seems like it's very polarized, and I wonder if we can add something that says if you're asymptomatic or you are able to work with your, I don't even know how we would phrase it. But there are people who are sick and they just have to be home. But their symptoms allow them to continue functioning and able to participate.
Yeah, I had a student over the summer who had COVID and it turned into pneumonia, and I gave him extra time, but I told him if he needs more time, just let me know. But he was able to finish the term without a problem.
So I welcome suggestions for how to word that. So, we can add here where it says you must, if you are asymptomatic, we can say asymptomatic, or I'm open to suggestions of what the or should be.
Charlene, what if we just say, to the best of your ability, you should continue to participate?
Yeah, we talked about this in the task force. That's a good point, Julia. And the word was engaged. As long as the student remained engaged from wherever they were quarantined, or if they have COVID, isolated, that it's the student's responsibility to remain engaged.
Erica put a great suggestion in the chat, so I want to make sure that was noted. If your symptoms do not interfere with your ability to participate in the course. So I just want to make sure her comment was also noted on record.
Yeah. Sorry. Let me add that. Sorry, I'm managing a lot of screens over here. Okay.
Charlene, I'm also curious of the statement, if you become sick with COVID, do we instead want to state test positive? Or are you just talking symptoms? Because I'm just thinking of the asymptomatic people.
The idea here is that maybe poorly worded, so we're very open to changing the wording. But the idea is, what if you become to the point where you're not going to function well, right? Whether it's because you have a fever or you're coughing, or you're in that. We all know there are times when you are sick where you're not going to be doing your best work. So I don't know how to phrase that, and I'm very open to suggestions on how to phrase that. But essentially, trying to find that distinction of you've been told to isolate or quarantine, but you're feeling fine and you can participate virtually, versus that tipping point when participation is going to become difficult and you may not be doing your best work. And maybe getting an extra week or two would really help you perform better in class. So I am open to suggestions about how to word that.
I will say it's going to be very hard for the university to require students to get tests, or potentially for us to get tests for all of our students. So that's why the recommended language does not always include the language about testing, because some people just are not going to be able to get a test in a reasonable time to send out those notifications. So tests may not come back for a week, depending on the situation we're in at a given time. So although it's unfortunate and that would be our ideal, and what we do with most other illness notifications that we send out to faculty. It's just not going to be possible with COVID given the pandemic and the availability of testing for folks, even if we are able to provide testing on campus.
So do we want to clarify the language if you become sick with COVID and miss coursework, or are we okay with that?
Charlene, I have a question. Just due to the fact that we're also going to be in the flu season, do we feel like we're too necessarily narrow talking about COVID, right? Because we do know there's going to be people testing positive, people testing negative, who have for sure had COVID, and that could be masking as the flu. Because I do believe the system's not necessarily requiring like flu shots until the springtime, essentially. So, do we need to change the language and just make it a little more, just take a step back? Because again, I feel like you might have a student who is super sick. And I know as Brett mentioned, there's other mechanisms to kind of to go through, but in this kind of time right now, I feel like it's all kind of mashed together for students. And so to provide as much like clarity for students in general, I feel like COVID should be kind of taken out. And if you are sick enough that we don't want you to come to class because you're sick, period. Not because of COVID, because being sick, period, because we don't necessarily know. And since Brett mentioned we can't necessarily test it, we're not requiring them to test either. So it seems to be more beneficial for maybe us to really dictate, kind of like take a step back and kind of just massage it from that type of point of view.
Okay, so you had two questions there. First, the system will require all students, unless they have an exemption, to get a flu shot, and those flu shots are planned for in the fall semester. So not when they return in August, but when it is appropriate for everyone to get their flu shots, that will be a requirement. So it will be at the start of the flu season. We chose to keep this policy focused on COVID because we also know faculty have other participation policies. And so this is meant to be in addition to what you have. This is meant to outline that we're not going to penalize students because of COVID. We didn't want to broaden the policy beyond that because we know it gets very sticky when we start talking about other reasons why people are absent. I think there can be a much larger discussion about absence policies that we can have, because I know there's been ongoing discussions about whether there should be larger absence policies that deal with things like students who go on university posted events, although that is actually in the handbook that they get to have a release. But right now, we wanted to stay focused on COVID. I think what you're getting at is it will be impossible to tell what's the flu and what's the COVID. So we're going to go with the app. So the app is going to tell the student, you stay home. Now, whether they're staying home because they're showing symptoms of the flu that are similar to COVID, that's for the app to figure out. We're here to follow whatever the app tells the student to do.
Charlene, I'll just clarify, it's not actually going to be the app that tells them what to do. It's going to be a notification that we receive. So I know the language says that, but it's a little bit confusing for folks because they actually get notification. So just as any faculty or staff that have submitted forms, HR sends notification out, it'll be SOS that sends that notification out. So the app they're supposed to be filling out, but it's not going to tell them to, per se, self-quarantine or self-isolate. It's going to tell them that they need to fill out the form so they can get that additional guidance. So that's just it might be a little bit misleading for folks. It is good to do it and something we certainly are expecting everybody to do.
I think Zabin had a question.
Yeah, I have a question about what if faculty notice certain students had a prolonged sicknesses, and do we make recommendation or do we report to university? What if students step on themselves and been sick for a long time without seeing doctor? And is there any kind of consideration of that?
So faculty always have the opportunity in any semester, not just the COVID semester, to anytime you have a student who you are concerned about, because, let's say they're not attending class on a regular basis, and you're not sure why, but it concerns you, you can fill out a student of concern form through the Dean of Students office or whatever their name is right now, and they will follow up with the student and see what's going on. Brett can speak more to that, but that is an option all faculty have at all times. Doesn't have to be a COVID semester, but if there is a student you are concerned about, you can fill out the student of concern form, and then the Dean of Students office will work with that student to figure out what's going on. Do you want to talk at all about that, Brett?
Sure. Yeah, the student of concern form, and I think it's listed further up in this document that Charlene has on the screen, is the way to report any student concern, including if there's a health-related concern. So if any faculty members notice that the student may be ill, maybe haven't reported or they're concerned about them, please let us know. It's utc.edu/COC community member of concern. We will follow up with them immediately and figure out what's going on and if they should be in isolation or quarantine specifically because of COVID. But that could be any issue, including mental health, physical health, any kind of concern that folks have. So that goes to student outreach and support, which falls under the Dean of Students area. So it's both accurate to say both.
I see there was a question in the chat about, could we get some clarification about that? We have a comment that departments could insert a statement here and kind of some guidance about this. There are some departments at the university that have very unique situations. We've used the School of Nursing as an example. So they have clinical experiences that they have to go to a hospital and spend the day there. There's a lot involved in setting those up. And so if a student misses that, it's not as simple to make that up as it might be in my law class. You missed a day, I can give you something online to make up. So we've left a space for departments that have these very unique face-to-face experiences that are not easy to duplicate to explain how they're going to handle that. So how is the School of Nursing going to handle that? That's where they get to insert a statement about how they're going to handle their clinical experiences. So it's really for departments that have highly unique face-to-face experiences that are going to be difficult to be made up, and the departments need to come up with a statement to add there that explains how they're going to handle that. Other thoughts, questions, concerns?
David has a question regarding that it may not just be a 14-day illness if it is really COVID, because there are people who are getting it and experiencing it months out. So again, this would be Brett, this would be your area to discuss if you would like to.
Well, and I should say, you know, we have in the if you become sick paragraph, if you read kind of to the last two sentences, we kind of address that. There will be cases where a student will fall so significantly behind in the semester, as we have if you have a student that has a serious illness or a car crash or something like that, where they're out for extended period of time. You know, then we need to talk to them about their options. They can take an incomplete and attempt to make it up later if they're close enough to the end of the semester, or there is the already existing withdrawal process that they can do through the records office, where they can do a late withdrawal from the semester for extenuating circumstances. But if Brett, you want to explain that anymore, you're welcome to.
No, I think you covered it, Charlene. If there's a necessity for a student to, or a student is unable to complete the class for some reason, folks will work with them, including the records office, student outreach support for withdrawing. Of course, we hope we don't have to do that for a lot of students, that students can do much of the work from home if they need to, given the pandemic, but certainly it's a possibility that they may not be able to if they're significantly ill. We've been fortunate that none of our students that at least we're aware of has fallen into that category, but as David mentioned, it's certainly possible. So I think that's something everybody needs to consider, but certainly we'd request that faculty work with the students to the best of their ability, knowing that that is a possibility for some students that's far out of their control.
And I see Takeo put a comment about we'll have international students who are arriving and are required to go into a 14-day quarantine. And so this is where they'll, all students that have been placed in isolation or quarantine, you know, we need to work with them. Hopefully we're in classroom situations where we can have the students virtually participate. And the reason in the section that's highlighted yellow, we say students should add a list here. It's really how, it's on each of us as instructors to explain how a student can continue to participate in our class if they're unable to attend face-to-face classes for whatever reason they've been placed in quarantine or isolation. And so, you know, for those of us that may find ourselves teaching in classrooms that are fully equipped and have web cameras, it's turning on the option to virtually participate through Zoom or Kaltura. For those of us that end up in classrooms that are not as well equipped, it's coming up with alternative ways for them to participate. I mean, this is the hard part of teaching face-to-face this fall. It's something I'm teaching a face-to-face course. It is something I am trying to work out myself, and we'll have to add a list there about how we plan to continue class if you are at home or in a quarantine room on a computer. So there is no one size fits all answer because we're all going to be in different situations in the classroom, but that's why we have an area for the instructor to insert what's going to work for their particular class. Okay. Ooh. Other questions, comments?
Charlene, this is Susan Thule. I put a question in the chat. I don't know if you saw it. I'm just a little concerned or wanted to know if you could elaborate a little bit on that as soon as possible time frame for the notification of the instructor. I worry that without more specificity, that becomes open to interpretation. You know, is a week, is 2 weeks? I wonder if there's not a benefit to saying, you know, within 48 hours or within, because I see a lot, especially on grade appeal, where we have certain time frames that it becomes a real mess. So my suggestion would be that we consider a very specific time frame that provides guidance for the students as well as the faculty.
My concern with that is if students are very ill, then that may be outside of their control. You know, I think the majority of students who are sick, yes, they certainly would be capable, but I would be concerned about having something that suggests to them that if they miss that window, then they can no longer get any accommodations. I do think a lot of this policy relies on a good faith effort by the students to do the right thing. I don't think we're going to be able to legalese our way out of the fact that potentially some students will abuse this, but I'm more concerned about students coming sick than I am about students abusing it. But there may be a middle ground where we can say, you know, maybe within 48 hours if possible, but I would prefer to leave some leeway for maybe not being able to.
So let's see what we could do, because we are in that sticky point of, yeah, if they're in a good position, they should try to email us as quick as possible. But of course, there's always going to be an outlier student. So please notify me of your absence by email. And then within, I'm just going to put in 48 now. We can change that. Within 48 hours, if possible. How do people feel about that?
The if possible gives us some leeway, so.
Sorry.
Could it possibly, Charlene, could it possibly say, or as soon as possible?
Sorry, what I was reading a chat message as you're talking, Jamie. What was
You've
your
got
suggestion?
lots going on.
What was your suggestion for a change? Within,
I can say,
comma, you were changing if possible.
as soon as possible, and it may
Okay.
be within 48 hours, and that's up for it's wordsmithing now.
So like, or as soon as possible.
As soon as you, the student, is possible, or something. That's fine.
I'm going to put the if because that gives us a little more leeway. If we do find a student, let's say a student has really no clue that they're sick, and then they become really aware when it is a critical moment and they are in that hospital for 72 hours. So it gives it that little, other thoughts on trying to keep up with the chats, other thoughts on the potential changes to the absence statement. Okay, then have I missed any other concerns, suggested changes, or are we ready to vote?
Charlene, I put one in the chat about possible revision of that if you become sick statement.
Okay.
Just
Let me
consideration.
Okay, so Marissa is suggesting that here we say, instead of saying if you become sick with COVID and miss coursework, we say if you become, if COVID-related illness results in any missed coursework, you should proactively.
So in other words, if you say any coursework, then that should cover face-to-face and online, and helps you shorten that sentence a little bit if that seems favorable to everybody.
Let me do this and we'll see. If COVID-related illness results in any missed coursework, so how do we feel about it reading like this instead and deleting that sentence above? We had talked in the meeting about should we say face-to-face or online, and we had added the face-to-face or online just to clarify that the statement does also apply to online classes, because when the first 2 to 3 paragraphs really are focused on face-to-face, and some faculty that are teaching 100% online may assume this doesn't apply to them, but there will be students that miss online coursework because of illness. So I don't know if we want to be really specific and spell out that this also applies to online or not.
Could you just add a parenthetical right after coursework, face-to-face or online?
So, and then we could get rid of that. Does everybody feel okay with that? I'll give everybody a moment to read through the whole policy.
Hey, Charlene, this is Michelle Rigler. Real quick, I just want to ask a question. The part down there that says if you have COVID-19 risk factors that may affect attendance, you're strongly encouraged to register with the Disability Resource Center. Does anybody read that as if you have COVID-19 symptoms, or do you think that'll be clear enough that if it's underlying risk factors?
Should we add the word underlying? Would that help clarify?
Yeah, I think that would help out.
Yeah, I mean, we may not have worded it perfectly, so I'm very open to wording, but we wanted to say there are also going to be students who are not, who are not positive for COVID, but have these underlying issues that will make higher risk.
Or maybe even just saying if you have COVID-19 disability-related risk factors. That might be even more clear.
Okay. Does that work?
I think it needs to lead with risk factors. Like if you have underlying risk factors that make you more susceptible to COVID, that may affect attendance. I think that's a better way of saying it, because then you're not saying, because it just comes off kind of, you're really talking about the risk factors that you're talking about factors that make them more susceptible to COVID-19. They should lead with that.
But there's other disability-related risk factors that are not necessarily chronic health-related. Does that make sense?
No.
I think if it's disability-related, it's not necessarily as focused just on health. I mean, that's what we'll see most of the time, for sure. but there are other risk factors like, you know, if we have students that have such a high level of anxiety that they can't wear a mask, then we're going to advocate for them to participate remotely. Those types of factors as well.
Okay.
All right, everybody take a moment, read through it, because we've made some changes. And then we'll take any more comments or suggestions, but take a moment to read through it. All right, Tammy, I see your comment about adding the link to the page where students can report their COVID symptoms. Let me ask Brett, when you fill out the app or whatever it's going to be, when the student fills it out and they show any possible symptom, they're automatically going to be sent to that page, right?
That's right. So just like when faculty and staff fill it out, it'll be very similar. So you'll fill it out. If you have any symptoms, it's going to say click on this form, and it's that same COVID-19 notification form, and it gives us the specific information. It asks, you know, do you have any symptoms? Have you been exposed to anybody? And then we provide specific guidance. You need to isolate, you need to quarantine, or we need additional information, and you should continue going to class. If someone says, I just have a cough, we're not going to tell them to quarantine if they don't have any other symptoms, for example. But if there's any chance that they do, we will tell them to quarantine at least until we can further assess them at University Health Services, as well as Dawn Ford's team following up with contact tracing if there is a potential positive case to make sure we're reaching everybody who they've been in contact with, including other students, faculty, and staff.
So has the university resolved the contact tracing issue? Like how are they going to contact trace when someone's not in class? And has that been released so that everybody can see how the university is going to do that?
Contact tracing is being done, and Dr. Ford, I don't know if she's on the call, but Dr. Ford is overseeing that effort. It's being done very similarly to how the health department's doing it, really consistently, and really we're doing it on behalf of the university, or behalf of the health department. So it's going to be very consistent with that. Dr. Ford, I'll let you explain further.
Yeah, it's the basic process is the same as what the health department does. They're permitting us to do contact tracing on their behalf. And as you know, we've been working with the health department since March, the beginning of the pandemic. We're still working on details about what additional things we can do to be as efficient as possible.
All right, I see a couple of things. So for consistency purposes, I'll make sure it says COVID-19 every time we say COVID. And then also I got to find every place we say face to face, and I'll put it face dash. So I will work on getting the inconsistencies. I think I caught that one. Is there another one? Okay. Any other comments, questions, suggestions about the statement?
Brett, this isn't about the statement. This is about the process for the students reporting. You know, in the School of Nursing, we start clinicals at 6 in the morning. Will there be somebody there?
Yeah, so we are going to have a case manager on call 24 hours a day reviewing these forms as they come in. So probably we will start, you know, there'll be a gap in the middle of the night where I want them to be asleep because they're still going to have to come to work the next day. So likely they will start coming in at 5 a.m. And at least reviewing the forms that have come in overnight and providing that initial guidance for the day. So part of our goal in talking in the intergroup with University Health, with Dr. Ford and the contact tracers, is to figure out what the earliest classes really are for a given day so we can hit them and make sure we get them that initial guidance. And then that guidance may change. So some students may be told 14 days and then the guidance may change and say, actually you don't need to quarantine, you haven't had that exposure. But out of an abundance of caution, we may tell them initially, you're going to quarantine. And again, we'll send out updated guidance to faculty so they know. If we initially told them 14 days and that's changed, hey, they actually need to be back in class now. There's no reason for them to be out unless something else happens. So yeah, we will take care of that for sure.
Thank you.
Charlene, I just had a quick question about this. I noticed that nowhere here, and I don't know if this was part of the discussion, there's nothing that states that students won't be penalized for this. It just says that they shouldn't come to class and they should get with their instructor about making up work, but there's nothing here that says the instructor won't penalize them for those absences or for that late work. Was there any discussion about that? Because it seems like that should be part of this policy, in my opinion.
So there was some discussion there. We find ourselves at an interesting crossroads in that some things will not be able to be made up. So I keep going back to the School of Nursing, but their clinical experiences are required for accreditation, and so they can be licensed. If they miss their clinical experience, there's, they can't just get a, oh, we'll just skip that part of the class. And so I welcome suggestions, but it's finding the wording to essentially say, don't penalize them except in these few rare cases where there really is no way around it. And so.
Well, I wonder if there's something that can just be said, about their grade isn't being penalized as long as they're still able to meet the outcomes of the requirements for the course. So we're giving them flexibility to meet those outcomes. If they're unable to meet the outcomes, of course, they're either going to have to, drop the class or retake it or something, or take it incomplete. But I'm just thinking specifically here, if a student, misses 2 weeks of class and an instructor has a policy in their syllabus that says after 2 weeks, I lower your grade, but they're missing class because of COVID-related illnesses, I would want to ensure that those students aren't getting their grades lowered or they're not being penalized for late work that they're doing. So I'm just, that's just my kind of 2 cents about ways in which we would want to protect students.
I'm open to suggestions. We do say, and I mean, we are at this kind of crossroads of, we need faculty to be as forgiving as possible. Then we have a few situations where there's a point where it's hard to replicate that experience. And so I'm open to suggestions about how to make it clearer that we're not supposed to be penalizing students. But at the same time, if you don't finish your entire coursework, you're not going to get, like if you only get halfway through the class, you're not going to get the grade you had at the midterm. Right.
I think saying something about you have to complete the course. We're just not going to penalize you if you can't do it in the timeline or whatever. And Michelle's brought up a great point in the chat. I don't know if everybody's seen it, but if students aren't specifically told that they're not going to be penalized, then they're going to come to class sick. If they believe that, if it says stay home, but also you can't, you can't make up this work without a penalty, or you can't make up this absence without a penalty, you run the risk of students coming to class sick or not being honest in reporting their symptoms and stuff like that.
So Brett Fuchs has suggested something in the chat. His sentence is, a course instructor may deny verified requests if the instructor believes that the students cannot reasonably achieve course learning objectives. I'm not so sure what all is meant by that. Would you like to expand, Brett? Because that sure sounds like you're going to be penalized.
Part of it was in the policy that we had proposed that was discussed in the last meeting. It was saying that verified requests, including COVID, would be excused. However, in cases such as the ones you mentioned, Charlene, where it would be, let's say the School of Nursing, where a student can't miss a certain thing just because of requirements, that line down there included that if the course instructor needs to deny the request because they just can't do it, there's no way for them to achieve the course learning outcomes, then that would need to be done. So I think there would be 2 lines that are needed, but that would be the line that say that instructors may need to do that. And a more simple line could be that requests would be approved. However, if they can't be approved because course learning outcomes can't be achieved, then that might be a reason to accept that. That's why we really pushed for a policy like that that said overall requests would be approved if they're verified, except for those certain reasons, because that is our fear, is that students will not submit requests because they are going to fear reprisal. And that's still a big concern that we have.
So do people approve of Brett's language? I'll try to cut and paste it.
I think, I think there's a couple of different suggestions, but it sounds like what we need to distinguish between is penalizing per se and not giving you an opportunity to, I think, so maybe just a statement that, your grade points will not be deducted for absence or for late work. However, you may still be required to complete that work. And I think it should probably go in the first paragraph, because I think the point that Michelle and others are making that, that it does cut to the heart. The whole reason there is a policy at this level is so that instructors don't take away points because students stay home when they're supposed to.
Michelle has a succinct comment in the chat.
That's from Michelle's statement. I don't want to touch the first paragraph because we were running into some issues about the first paragraph, and I don't want to change it too much for fear of getting some of the issues back. So, but if that doesn't work with flow, we can move it around.
Could we also possibly add for absences or missed exams, because we have students show up to our testing center super sick all the time?
Could we possibly add in the second paragraph where it says you're not required to provide me with documentation of your symptoms, I will work with you to identify kind of in essence ways to be successful or ways to meet the course criteria, something to that nature, so that we let students know that we are willing to work with them, but we don't kind of box ourselves into points or deadlines, but just I will work with you to identify opportunities for you to complete the course requirements.
Thoughts on that?
I think I would put, instead of missed course assessments, I might put late course assessments, because missed implies that they missed them and just didn't do them. Like, yeah, I would say just late course assessments, because they would still have to make them up. Does that make sense?
Does that work?
What if we stopped it at, if we stopped that sentence at, students will not be penalized for absences, period. I will work with you to identify ways to complete your course requirements.
And then what do we do with the other? Do we delete what's been cut out? Do we put it somewhere else? Thoughts?
Well, if you delete that, then the instructor would still be able to penalize them for late work, because it just says, I will work with you, but that would leave instructors open to deduct points for late work, which is
which was my concern originally, I think.
Should we go back to that, that version, go forward, thoughts? Oops, let me scroll on. So everybody take a moment, reread the whole statement. I don't want to force a vote before we feel like we've understand what we're looking at.
Charlie, I have a question. So are we going to be voting for so when we do vote for this, are we voting for this policy as is stated, what we see on the screen right now, or are we voting to move forward? Because even though I'm not a teaching faculty member, I would assume that my colleagues here would like to get maybe some more feedback from their colleagues within their departments. And I feel like not necessarily voting is rushing, but do we have the mechanisms to vote via Canvas if we give this like a week delay, not necessarily having another full meeting to not waiting for another meeting, which is a while away, but being able to pass this back out to our constituents and get some feedback. So I'm pretty sure, even though we represent the body, I think this is a major component moving forward for the fall, and I personally feel slightly more comfortable making sure that we have a little more eyes and some more feedback on it personally.
So I see three ways forward, and we can choose the way forward. So first option, we vote today. Second option, we send it back out for a week and we do an online vote in a week. Third option is we call a meeting on the Zoom in a week and vote in the Zoom meeting. So it's really, what do you all want to do? Do we want to vote on our options?
I'll make a motion for you. I'll make a motion that we send it out to the whole faculty, open some form of discussion somewhere. I think the Canvas site would allow for that, and take an electronic vote of senators at the end of that week.
All right, so the motion is we distribute this revised policy to the faculty. We put a time period for discussion on Canvas. There is a full faculty and adjunct faculty Canvas group, so we could do it through there. And then we have a vote electronically through the Faculty Senate Canvas site in a week. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay. So that's the motion on the table. Send back out, have an online discussion available, have a vote in 1 week by the Senate. So we'll do our voting using our yes or no in the participants. So yes is you agree with doing the voting in 1 week after there's a period for faculty to comment. No is no, you don't agree with that. So take a moment to vote. All right, by my vote, there were 27 yeses. I'll go back through and double check that, but there were no nos. So what we will do is I will post this up on the various Canvas sites, send out an email shortly after this meeting calling for feedback from the faculty, and then we will set up votes to be conducted by the Senate electronically. Okay, on to our next agenda item, if I can find it. All right. All right, our next agenda item, this is a business item. At the first meeting of every year, we need to confirm the 2020-2021 committees. I sent out the list of committees. Do we have a motion to confirm the committees?
Charlene, excuse me, this is Jamie. Just one note on, it's Lee Harris, not Les Harris. That's on the undergraduate.
All right, I'll fix that, thank you, yeah.
Okay, I felt like it was Lee because it's music, so it's Lee Harris.
Yeah, okay. Do we have a motion to confirm the committees?
I make that motion to confirm.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. They're all right. We'll use a vote. We have to vote again. So yes for the yeses, or no for the committees. Okay. All right, that's 27 yeses, or 28. Okay. We didn't have any unfinished business before, so now we'll move on to faculty concerns. Do we have any faculty concerns?
Charlene, forgive me if this is not the right time to bring this up, but in terms of your description of the charges for the committees, a faculty member asked me to make a suggestion. Is this a good time to do that?
Yes, you're welcome to make that.
Okay. I think it's the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. I can't find the name right now. But a faculty member suggested that they also be charged with looking at service and who's performing service. You know, there has been sort of anecdotal comments about particularly underrepresented minorities performing a disproportionate amount of service, and I think it would be helpful to have that committee look at ways we might be able to measure that. That was a suggestion that I certainly agree with.
I will add that, yes, I think that's also related to the workload, our need to create a workload policy in general, because it's, I don't think anyone's, you know, yes, related to both, and I will add that.
Yeah. And I'm really glad that they're going to be looking at the course learning evaluations. I know that's something that the course learning evaluation committee has been talking about, and I'm glad that's going to be looked at.
A faculty concern came to me offline. And I'm going to read the concern. If Black Lives Matter at UTC, then why is the experience or the Juneteenth program last month being held after work hours? Why is it that faculty and students are invited and encouraged to actively participate in research dialogues each spring, but the Mock Forward conference is intentionally when students are historically on fall break? This is an institution of higher learning. Discourse and dialogue are the highlights of the Academy. UTC has an opportunity to demonstrate that Black lives really do matter by programming such as this into a teachable moment. This programming is obviously needed by the entire campus community and is just as valuable as other scholarly activity that occurs at UTC and should therefore occur during the work day. So I think that's a very important concern. And I, as faculty president, will talk with the organizers of Maxword and see if there's something that can be done to address that. And I will also try to work with any organization that's open to working with adding more programming, particularly during hours when students would be likely to, students and faculty and staff would be likely to be involved. Other faculty concerns or comments?
Sure. So I wanted to just mention that I shared a link in the chat if anyone wants to look at that from United Campus Workers here on campus. It's an organization that I and some other people are involved with if anyone's interested in that. Also, I've been talking to some other faculty about the fall and particular whether it might be possible to change to teaching online, even if you don't have one of the sort of high risk areas. So I know, speaking for myself anyway, when I originally agreed to maybe do some hybrid face-to-face courses, I maybe thought the pandemic might be in a better situation than it is right now. So I think maybe that's something, I don't know if this body could take a position on or look into maybe in the next, I don't have a specific suggestion. This is my first meeting as a senator, so I'm not sure what the proper course would be, but that's something I think that we should maybe think about as a faculty senate going forward. So about how these decisions are made, about who gets to teach online and how that process actually works. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about that on the provost and chancellor calls as well, but maybe I just thought that would be something the faculty senate might address at some point. So thank you.
Sure, so Ethan did share a link in the chat. You're all welcome to follow it. I will say, since you are new, Ethan, you know, faculty senators are welcome to bring motions themselves to the Senate to consider. So, you know, if you have a motion you want to bring forward to a future meeting, you're welcome to submit it. We do need motions 72 hours in advance so they can be distributed to the faculty. But that is a route. Motions come from a lot of different sources. They come from faculty senate exec, they come from committees, but they can also come from senators.
Thank you.
Charlene, this is Chris Stewart. I wrote to you last week about a concern I would like to see the faculty senate address about the voting rights for lecturers within individual departments, and that they vary widely from department to department. And it seems to me that as lecturers become a more substantial and a more permanent part of faculty staffing, that there ought to be some consistency across departments with flexibility, obviously, but that there ought to be a conversation that both empowers lecturers to vote on those things in which they have obviously a vested interest. On the other hand, I'm also concerned, and there are probably colleagues of mine who are not happy about me raising this issue in the faculty senate, but in the English department in 2004, very quickly, I'm going to try and do this fast, give you a quick history of where my concerns come from. In 2003, 2004, in our original bylaws, we had 4 lecturers in the department, and we extended to them full voting rights on curriculum, on voting when the faculty makes a recommendation on the next department head, et cetera. We now have a situation in the English department where lecturers outnumber the tenure line faculty. So we now have 27 lecturers to something like 24 tenure track faculty members. Meaning, and what it means is that lecturers who in the English department, many do not hold a terminal degree, they can outvote us on the major curriculum. And the only way to adjust that situation would to have a change in the bylaws. However, they also have full voting rights on the bylaws. And so you can imagine how contentious this would be intra-departmentally. And so we are at We have some faculty like me who believe that the tenure track faculty should be in charge of the major curriculum. These lecturers do not teach in the major curriculum, which is also in the bylaws. So they have control over a curriculum in which they do not teach. In my view, lecturers should absolutely have a vote within a curriculum that they do teach in, and I think in many departments they probably don't. And I have not canvassed all the other departments. I don't know how other department heads feel. I felt strongly about this issue when I was department head, but obviously we were at a roadblock. And the only way, it seems to me, to deal with it is to deal with it as a faculty, university-wide, and see if we can come up with something that is both flexible, but that is also reasonable, and also, I think, truly empowering for lecturers. I think there are a lot of lecturers who have very little representation within the departments. That is, they are welcome to attend meetings, and that's about it. They don't vote on anything, is my understanding, for example, in some departments. So anyway, that's an issue that's important to me, and that I'm hoping that faculty and folks will think about. I don't know what will become of it. If anything, maybe nobody else cares, and in which case it'll die on the vine and things will stay as they are. But anyway, that's my concern.
Okay, duly noted. I know this came from, so I drafted some presidential priorities, and one of the priorities is to look at representation of instructors, non-tenure track instructors on the Senate, but that could be expanded to look at other situations. I will state that on the Senate, we currently have 3 senators who represent non-tenure track faculty when there are 30-some senators. So I think, I haven't done the math, we can get Matt Matthews to run all the figures, but I suspect that their representation on the Senate does not reflect their percentage of our faculty. So definitely going to look at that, but Chris brings up a larger issue. It does vary greatly among departments. In my department, Department of Communication, we have always treated instructors just as we treat all tenure track faculty. Everyone gets a vote. So I understand that that is not what all departments do, but it is what my department does. So I think we definitely need to have some conversations about non-tenure track faculty. My plan for the year, once we get everything going, is to have some open forums on different topics. We can definitely have this as an open forum topic, and if it needs to then lead to the creation of a committee to examine this further, I'm open to that as well.
Carolyn, can I ask you a question? How many lecturers does the Department of Communications currently have on staff?
We have 4, and we have 9 tenure track faculty. So they make up more than a quarter of our faculty.
Thanks.
Other faculty concerns? Okay, then announcements. So time for we need to come up, the one committee we don't have yet is the Faculty Handbook Committee. And membership is limited to senators. So I'm looking at all the senators on the Zoom call. It is time for some of you to volunteer to serve on this year's Faculty Handbook Committee. You don't have to volunteer today, but please think about volunteering for the Faculty Handbook. It is a very important committee. The handbook is what drives so much of the policies related to faculty. So if you are willing to volunteer, and I will also send out an email so that the senators who weren't in attendance today have a similar opportunity. But if you would like to volunteer for the Faculty Handbook, please send me an email, and because I need to form that committee. Handbook is also an area that I'm sure, you know, we'll look at obviously the voting rights of instructors. I also shared with you my presidential priorities. It is a working document, and I do welcome ideas. I will be adding the ones that came today, and I really do welcome additional ideas and concerns. That is based on things that I've heard over the last year, but I am sure it is not fully inclusive of all the different issues that we need to address. And so I am very open at any time to people contacting me with ideas about what other issues we need to cover. It can be a broad idea. It can be a specific task. I'm open to any ideas. Oh, as Matt Matthews pointed out, bonus of being on the handbook committee is you get to spend a lot of time with Matt Matthews. Okay, any other announcements? Free for all announcements.
Charlene, do we also have another arts, social and behavioral science
yes,
person that needs to run?
Correct. Thank you for reminding me, Tammy. We do have one open slot on the Senate. We are one person short on the behavioral and social sciences side. We have an open seat. So if you know someone in the behavioral and social sciences, please encourage them to step up to volunteer to serve as a senator. If we get more than one volunteer, we'll do a runoff election, but we do have an open seat in the behavioral and social sciences.
Also, I'm about to solicit adjuncts, so be thinking about what adjunct, because we do need non-tenure track representation on faculty senate. So please start thinking about who might be a really good person to run.
We also need adjuncts on the non-tenure track committee, and we need representatives from each college. So if you know of any adjuncts who might be interested in serving on the non-tenure track committee for next year, that would be wonderful too.
Yes, for the non-tenure track committee, we need one per college, so a total of 4. And it can be difficult in some of the colleges, so please encourage the adjuncts to step up and serve on that committee. Other announcements? Okay, look for an email. I will be posting the drafted version of the COVID absence statement, and then I'll put that out as an email, and then look early next week for the email about how to vote using Canvas, so we can decide if that's a statement for us. Do we have a call for adjournment?
I will. Jamie Harvey.
Second.
Oh, and there we have a second. Okay, thank you all for taking time out of your July. We will see you at the normal Faculty Senate meeting in August.
Thanks, Charlene.
Thank you.